Jamie Fraser was supposed to die. Instead, something happened on screen that nobody expected, and the man behind it all is finally breaking his silence. For 12 years, fans held their breath waiting for this moment, and when it finally arrived, it left millions of viewers stunned, confused, and desperate for answers. The Outlander series finale aired on May 15, 2026, closing out 8 seasons of a love story that spanned centuries, wars, and time itself. But instead of giving fans the closure they were begging for, the ending did something far more dangerous. It left the fate of Jamie and Claire Fraser hanging in the balance, and now the entire fandom is split into 2 camps, desperately trying to figure out what really happened in those final breathless seconds. Here's what we know for certain. The finale, titled "And the World Was All Around Us," centered on the Battle of Kings Mountain, a fight that had been looming over the entire season like a dark cloud. Earlier in Season 8, Claire's first husband Frank Randall had written a history book claiming that Jamie would die in this exact battle. That prophecy hung over every single episode leading up to the finale, and fans spent weeks bracing themselves for heartbreak. When the battle finally happened, Jamie's side won, but the victory came at a devastating cost. Jamie was shot by Patrick Ferguson, the man leading the opposing troops, and for a moment it looked like the prophecy had come true after all. But that's not where the story ended. Claire refused to leave his side. She stayed with him through the night, held his body, and declared to anyone who would listen that Frank had been wrong. And then something happened that changed everything. The episode cut away to reveal a mystery that had been sitting dormant since the very first episode of the show back in 2014. Jamie's ghost appeared, walking through moments from Claire's past, retracing steps that connected directly to the pilot episode. Longtime fans immediately recognized what was happening. This was the same mysterious Highlander figure that Frank saw watching Claire through a window in 1940s Inverness, decades before she ever fell through the stones at Cray na Dun. Jamie's ghost eventually walked to those very stones, touched the center one, and disappeared. In his place, forget-me-not flowers bloomed, the same flowers Claire had been reaching for the moment she first traveled through time to find him. It was a stunning piece of storytelling, tying the very beginning of the show to its very end, and for a moment it felt like a goodbye. It felt like Jamie had died and his spirit had gone back to say farewell to the woman who loved him across centuries. And then the twist hit. The camera cut back to Claire and Jamie's bodies, and something was different. Claire's hair, once a mix of gray and brown, was now completely white. Longtime fans of the books immediately understood the significance. White hair had long been tied to Claire coming into the full power of her healing abilities. And then, without warning, both Jamie and Claire took a huge, desperate breath of air. They were alive. Or at least that's what it looked like. The screen went black almost immediately after, refusing to confirm anything. No dialogue. No explanation. Just 2 people gasping for breath after everyone watching assumed they were gone forever. It was the kind of ending that leaves you sitting in stunned silence, unsure whether to celebrate or panic. And that uncertainty is exactly what the showrunner wanted. Matthew B. Roberts, who has guided this show as writer, showrunner, and executive producer, has remained almost impossibly tight-lipped about what that final breath actually meant. When directly asked whether Jamie and Claire truly survived, he refused to give a straight answer, insisting that every single viewer gets to decide for themselves what happened in that moment. Some fans believe this was a genuine resurrection, that Claire's healing powers, now fully awakened, somehow brought Jamie back from the edge of death. Others believe something far stranger happened. They believe Jamie and Claire didn't survive at all, and that the breath we saw wasn't a return to life, but the 2 of them waking up together in the afterlife, finally reunited after everything they had been through. Roberts has hinted that there are subtle clues buried in the episode for anyone paying close enough attention. During the scene where Claire grieves over Jamie's body, before the story cuts away to his ghost walking through Inverness, there's a faint blue light glowing from her chest. For readers of the original book series, that blue light is instantly recognizable. It's the same signature glow that has represented Claire's healing magic throughout the entire story. If that light really was her power reaching out to save him, then the ending makes a lot more sense. But if you missed that detail entirely, and most casual viewers absolutely did, the ending becomes almost impossible to interpret with any confidence. And that, according to Roberts, was exactly the point. He wanted the audience to form their own emotional truth, rather than being handed one single answer. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because the finale didn't just leave the fate of two beloved characters completely open. It also introduced a post-credits scene that, on the surface, seemed like a simple, sweet tribute. Underneath it, though, there's a much bigger story about what this show meant to the people who spent over a decade building it, and why that final image might be hinting at something much bigger than anyone realized. The post-credits scene that played after the finale seemed simple at first glance, but the more you dig into it, the more emotional weight it actually carries. It showed Diana Gabaldon, the author whose book started this entire universe back before the show ever existed, sitting at a table signing copies of her novels. Beside her sat a journal that closely resembled Claire's own journal from the show, the one she used throughout the series to record her thoughts, her medical notes, and her deepest secrets. Surrounding her was a line of fans, patiently waiting for their turn to get a book signed, smiling and chatting as if this were any ordinary book signing at any ordinary bookstore. Except it wasn't ordinary at all. Every single person standing in that line, every extra you saw in that scene, had actually worked on the show since day one. These weren't random background actors hired for the day. They were members of the crew who had spent 12 years building this world, season after season, through freezing shoots, brutal schedules, and years of their lives dedicated to bringing this story to the screen. And in an even more touching detail, the books stacked around the store weren't just props. Each one was labeled with the crew member's actual job title, and the books themselves were written by them. It was a quiet, personal thank you disguised as a simple bookstore scene, a way of saying that the people behind the camera deserve just as much recognition as the story they helped tell. Roberts has since confirmed that this was intentional from the very beginning. He described it as a love letter to the crew, a way of honoring everyone who stuck with the show for over a decade. But he also framed it as something bigger. He wanted the very last image the audience sees on Outlander to belong to Diana Gabaldon herself, because in his words, she's the one who created this entire world. Jamie, Claire, every character, every twist, every heartbreak, it all started with her imagination decades ago. By ending on her, the show wasn't just saying goodbye to its characters. It was handing the story back to the person who started it all, closing the loop in a way that felt deeply respectful and deeply personal. And that detail matters more than it might seem, because Gabaldon isn't done telling this story. She's currently writing what she has confirmed will be the 10th and final book in the Outlander series. The show may have reached its ending, but the books haven't caught up yet, which means there are still major chapters of this story that exist only in Gabaldon's head right now. Chapters the television adaptation never got the chance to explore. Roberts has openly admitted that there simply wasn't enough time to cover everything. He specifically mentioned wishing there had been room to dive deeper into Lord John Grey's story, to spend more time developing William's evolving arc, and to give more attention to the relationship between Fanny, Jamie, and Claire. These aren't small side characters either. These are threads that fans have been emotionally invested in for years, threads that were left dangling the moment the credits rolled. This is exactly why the conversation around a potential Outlander movie has exploded since the finale aired. Because it's not just about wanting more time with Jamie and Claire out of nostalgia. It's about the fact that there are genuine unresolved storylines sitting right there, waiting to be picked back up. Fans aren't just being greedy here. They're pointing at very real gaps in the story and asking a completely fair question. If the show ran out of time to tell certain stories, and the books haven't caught up yet, doesn't that mean a movie isn't just a nice idea, but almost a narrative necessity? Roberts has actually addressed this possibility directly, and his answer wasn't a firm no. When asked whether he and the cast would want more time to continue Jamie and Claire's story in some form, he acknowledged that there's definitely an appetite for it. He pointed out that Katrina Balfe and Sam Heughan have played these exact characters for 12 years straight, through brutal physical demands most actors never have to deal with. Riding horses for hours, fighting in freezing mud, spending entire days in period costumes under difficult conditions. He suggested that after everything they've given to this show, they deserve the freedom to explore other opportunities, but he was also careful to add that nobody involved with the show is closing the door completely. As he put it, the phrase everyone keeps coming back to is simple: never say never. And then came the moment that sent the entire fandom into a frenzy. When asked point blank whether a movie continuing Jamie and Claire's story could actually happen, Roberts gave a one-word answer that wasn't a no. He said, maybe. That single word has been dissected, analyzed, and repeated across every fan forum since the interview came out, because in an industry where showrunners usually shut down speculation immediately, a maybe from the person who controls this entire universe means something. It means the door isn't closed. It means there's still a chance. So now the real question becomes, if that movie actually happens, what story would it even tell? Would it follow Jamie and Claire living out their lives after this ambiguous ending, finally getting the peaceful future they've been denied for over a decade? Or would it dive into something far stranger, something involving time travel, lingering mysteries the show never fully explained, and a granddaughter who might hold the key to everything that's still left unanswered? Let's start with the most obvious mystery hanging over everything, because even after 8 full seasons, the show never fully explained how time travel actually works in this universe. We still don't know whether history can truly be changed, or whether every attempt to alter the past somehow gets twisted back into place no matter what. We still don't fully understand how all the different time travelers throughout the story are connected to each other, or why certain bloodlines seem to carry this ability while others don't. A movie could finally answer some of these lingering questions, but if Jamie and Claire really did survive that final battle, and are still living their lives together, there's an even bigger question sitting right in front of us. What happens to two people who just cheated death in front of an entire community that watched Jamie get shot? Think about what that would actually look like in the world of the story. Everyone at the Ridge saw Jamie go down. Everyone knew Claire never left his side, not even for a second, through an entire night of waiting and praying. And then suddenly, both of them wake up breathing alive with Claire's hair now completely white overnight. To us, the audience, that white hair carries a beautiful meaning. It represents Claire stepping into the full power of her healing gift, possibly sacrificing something of her own to bring Jamie back. But to the people actually living on that ridge in the 18th century, none of that context exists. All they would see is a woman whose hair turned white in a single night, standing beside a man who was shot and somehow isn't dead. In a time and place where accusations of witchcraft could get you killed, that's not a happy ending. That's a terrifying situation waiting to explode. It raises a chilling possibility that a movie could actually explore. Jamie and Claire might not be able to safely stay at the Ridge anymore. If their community starts to suspect that something unnatural happened, fear could turn into panic, and panic in that era often turned deadly. That would force the two of them into hiding, cutting them off from the family and community they spent years building. And that raises even more questions. How would they ever safely reconnect with their children and grandchildren without exposing what really happened? What happens if word spreads and someone tracks them down specifically because of what people believe they witnessed? There's another theory circling that takes this even further. If Claire truly gave part of her own life force to save Jamie, some fans believe that exchange might have done more than just heal him. It might have transferred a piece of her ability to travel through time directly into him. This theory actually connects to something the show planted years ago, when Claire described feeling a strange blue light surrounding her when Master Raymond once saved her life. Many fans have long believed that moment wasn't just a healing spell, but an actual transfer of power from him to her. If something similar happened between Claire and Jamie during the battle, it would mean Jamie Fraser, a man who has spent his entire life anchored firmly in the 18th century, could suddenly have access to time itself. If that's the direction any future movie decides to take, it opens up an enormous storytelling opportunity. Imagine Jamie and Claire traveling through time together for the first time as equals, both capable of crossing centuries side by side instead of one always waiting behind for the other to return. It's worth remembering that Claire spent noticeably more time talking about her own parents throughout this final season than she had in years of the show. That's not something writers usually include by accident. It feels deliberate, like it's setting up a future reveal, whether that means Claire finally uncovering the full truth about her parents' lives, or even the two of them finding a way to actually meet face to face. If Jamie really can travel through time now, a reunion like that suddenly becomes possible in a way it never was before. But not every fan believes Jamie and Claire actually survived at all. A significant portion of viewers are convinced that Final Breath wasn't a return to the living world, but rather the exact opposite. They believe Jamie and Claire woke up together in the afterlife, finally free from the pain, danger, and separation that defined their entire relationship. If that theory turns out to be correct, a movie built entirely around an afterlife reunion might not have enough tension or forward momentum to sustain a full feature-length story on its own. Watching two characters simply exist peacefully in the afterlife, without stakes, without danger, without anything left to lose, risks feeling flat compared to everything that came before it. Which is exactly why so many fans keep circling back to one specific storyline that could give an afterlife-based movie the emotional stakes it would desperately need. And that storyline centers on someone the show barely got to explore before the credits rolled for good, a character whose entire existence raises questions the finale never even attempted to answer.